The market is meant to facilitate trade, and we are meant to interpret the trade activity. And to understand the positioning and when the market is offsides or wrong in their positioning, it's important to understand delta, specifically delta by price. Delta at price is the ask volume minus the bid volume. Therefore, if we have a volume at a specific price level of 100, but of that 100, 80 of them were individuals who bid up and bought the ask, that's ask volume. If 20 of them were bid volume, they sold at market and they sold a bid, then that's 20 bid volume. If you have that against 100, then you have 80 of the ask volume. So, displaying the volume activity as a level swayed in the direction of buyer participation, that would be a heavily tilted buy volume. This is key since we know the transaction has a buyer and a seller, and we're going to decipher that. Watching these occur on a price axis gives us clues to dominance, two-way trade, crowded trade situations. Price action will go up to rid the market of buyers, and it will go down to rid the market of sellers. In an auction where the price action is moving directionally in one direction only, it's ideal to see nearly neutral delta, without outliers in delta with respect to the levels above and below. Neutral delta, basically even two-way trade, allows us to see that two-way trade taking place, and the dominant price movement shall resume until the exhaustion. As we come to the edge of a particular trade range, you'll find that one side gets run out of gas, or simply put, they overwhelmingly exhaust their positioning, buy too many, sell too many, and the opposite side is able to then push against them and drive them out of position. Offsides delta allows us to see that potential exhaustion in the market direction and potentially position a counter trade to that activity. To be offsides means that those who are positioned, if we have a bunch of sell delta at the bottom and price is above them, that's unfavorable. And so that's offsides. To be offsides means that participants have positioned unfavorably on the side of trade. Visualizing these poorly positioned participants gives you an edge to key inflection points in the auction with minimal risk. And it's interesting to note that as you have an offsides delta and price comes back to test that level, if we have an offsides sell delta in this example like we do, if we push up and push some out of their position, if we come back to that level, you'll have the rest waiting there to get out of their position. I mean, we're all human. So if you sold a handful of lots there and price comes back to you and gives the opportunity for you to get out of break even, then human nature is to get out of break even. So this will help show further confirmation for the entry. Now, if you see an outlier delta that is not against their position, so if we have a large sell delta like you're seeing here and price is not above them, then they're not offsides. They're simply correct. And it's necessary to understand that. So, for example, a trend day. If you see a trend day up and you see a large outlier buy delta, but price continues to go up, they're not wrong until they push down into those positions, initiating that liquidation. Hey, this is Job from Orderflow Labs, and tonight I'm going to be diving further into the volume aspect of this. And I'm going to be showing delta at this point. This is a footprint candle, and so this footprint candle is a point and figure. It's a 1 by 12, and so what we're going to be looking at is the delta. Instead of the total volume, we're going to be looking at delta, which is ask minus bid. And so we want to see who is the heavily weighted side, and if they are positioned, if price were to go against them, what would they do? So if you're a seller at the low and price goes above you, then you're looking to probably get out of your position and you turn into a buyer. So in this example, what we're going to be looking at is an overnight session into a pre-market into an RTH. And so it'll help us gauge the aspect of inventory from a buyer and seller side and see where others are positioned in a more detailed manner. And so if we look here, the blue parts of these footprints are the buyers or the bid side, and the red are the heavily weighted sell side. So what is delta ask minus bid? So on the left here, we see we have negative 339. So negative 339 means we have 339 more sellers than buyers. Down here at the bottom, we have negative 141. We have 141 more sellers than buyers. And so if I inch this to the right, upon each candle, this delta on the right is going to grow, and you're going to see this occur. And so as this grows, we'll start to see that sell delta down in this range, the lows, down in here, begin to grow. So as price lingers in this channel down here, we begin to see that we have 500 more sellers at this level, 166 more. We've got over 1,000 more sellers down here than buyers, and price is not below them. So it's not progressing in their favor. If price were to push above them, it's going to be pushing them out of position. They're going to be covering their position. And so if we look at this here, it pushes down in and creates more sellers. It stays in that distribution. And then we begin to see this buy delta come in. And this buy delta means there's 581 more buyers than sellers. Below them, we have a lot of sell delta. So as this ranges in this vicinity, this sell delta below begins to form a form of support for the buy side, because every time it pushes down in, each one of those sellers, they're feeling, oh man, now I can get out of break even. Now I can get out of my position. But if they're stuck there, they're going to accelerate price up. So if we look at this here, as price oscillates into the RTH session, and we have all this sell delta down here, which pushes down into distribution. Now we have an outstanding. This is an outlier. Something I'd be looking for. Something that sticks out on the tape. Lets you know that, hey, we have somebody overwhelming based upon the current market status, what we've seen leading up into this, and therefore I would expect this here to be a little bit overwhelmed. And if we don't push down and accelerate significantly in the favor of those positions, they will be stopped out and lead to a rapid bid. So price begins to oscillate in that range. And as it pushes up against, what do we get? More sellers trying to sell the low for the breakout. And then, as we get the covering, you can see a rapid acceleration to the upside, which leads to about a 20-point move against that overwhelming delta. You can place the volume by price on your chart. Okay, it can show total volume. You can put the settings to be delta, which is ask minus bid volume, and you can display it in this manner. When you have these outliers like this, that speaks to you, letting you know that somebody's off size or over positioned at the end of the range. So if we're at the bottom of the range, we see a large, an overwhelming sell delta like this, you would look for this to get pushed out. If we're at the top of the range, you see overwhelming bid delta, then you would look for the same and vice versa. And so how does this play out? It continues to bid against them until that position unwinds and goes on up. So bringing this back into this, delta is the ask minus bid. You can look at delta in several different ways. This is one way to look at it, and this is the visible bars. What has occurred up until this point, and this is including partial glowbacks into the RTH open, letting you know who is positioned, and as they're positioned, you can see that they're heavily positioned down here, and if price does not go in their favor, what do they have to do? They have to cover, and that leads to a rally and above their position. This is offside delta. So when you see an outlier delta like this, what you want to see is price not going in their favor, lingering and positioning against that in order to push those positions out of place and offsides for a move. In this example, watch for these outlier sell delta at the lows come into play, and then price consolidates. And as we bid above, they begin to neutralize their positioning, and it consolidates a little bit before the acceleration to the upside. This is Offsides Delta with Joe from Order Flow Labs. Now we look at multiple aspects of the order flow activity that come in off the tape, and this is one thing that is necessary to keep in mind. And so as we continue to build upon sessions, pay attention to these aspects as you see them in trade.